Nexus Station hung like a gleaming metal spider in the void of space, its 8 massive docking arms stretched outward, each teeming with spacecraft of various designs and origins. The central hub, a colossal sphere of reinforced alloys and transparent viewports, housed the main plaza, a chaotic crossroads of galactic commerce and diplomacy. I am Crix 9, observer and cultural attaché of the Vaxian Confederacy, assigned to document interspecies interactions on this cesspool of a station. My official reports are meant to inform diplomatic policy, but between you and me, they mostly serve as entertainment for my superiors back home. The antics of inferior species provide endless amusement, particularly those of humans. Ah, humans, the cosmic joke of sentient evolution. Their recent admission to the Interplanetary Council was considered by many to be the greatest political blunder in recent memory. Small, fragile creatures with no natural defenses, lacking even the most basic evolutionary advantages like exoskeletons, natural weaponry, or significant physical strength. Their home planet is unremarkable, their technology borrowed, their military presence symbolic at best. Yet there they were, 4 of them, huddled around a food dispensary in the station's central plaza like lost children. I approached closer, activating my subtle recording devices embedded in my ocular ridges. This would make excellent material for my weekly report. The oldest human male stood tall for his species, perhaps 180 centimeters, with silver-streaked dark hair and brown skin, Dr. Ajay Patel. According to my identification scan, he was speaking calmly to a young female, presumably his granddaughter based on their genetic markers, Maya Singh, barely into adulthood by human standards. Beside them stood another male, Tom Harrison, and slightly apart, a formal-looking female in what appeared to be a military uniform, Captain Elena Vasquez. The protein paste here is actually quite palatable, Dr. Patel was saying, gesturing to a gray substance that resembled industrial sealant. It contains 17 essential amino acids that even our bodies can process. Maya wrinkled her small nose, a gesture I've learned indicates disgust among their kind. I'll stick with the synthesized fruit. Thank you. At least it resembles something from Earth. You humans and your fixation on food appearance, I muttered to myself, recording their primitive nutritional debate. Vaxians have long evolved beyond such concerns, our nutrient absorption happening directly through specialized skin membranes. The conversation might have continued its tedious course had fate not intervened in the form of Sergeant Vorth and his Gordanian peacekeeping squad. The Gordanians, tall, muscular bipeds with scaled skin and impressively ridged cranial structures, were among the station's primary security forces. Vorth himself was a magnificent specimen, standing over 2 meters tall, his uniform adorned with tokens of various peacekeeping missions across the quadrant. My recording intensified as I observed Vorth's attention shift toward the human group. His facial ridges flared slightly, a sign of irritation or perhaps contempt. The humans continued their meal, oblivious to the approaching threat, their dull senses unable to detect the pheromones of aggression now permeating the air. Humans! Vorth's voice boomed across the plaza, causing several nearby Glynn merchants to retract their sensory appendages in alarm, always congregating in packs, as if your combined weakness might somehow equal strength. The humans turned, their expressions varying from surprise to cautious neutrality. Dr. Patel stepped slightly forward, positioning himself between the approaching Gordanians and the younger humans. "Good day, officer," he said pleasantly. "Is there something we can help you with?" Vorth's upper lip curled, revealing rows of serrated teeth. "You can help by returning to your homeworld and ceasing to contaminate civilized space with your presence." I moved closer, my recording devices capturing every delicious moment of tension. This was precisely the kind of material my superiors enjoyed, the humbling of humans, who had inexplicably been granted equal status despite their obvious inferiority. "We have the same rights to be here as any council species," Captain Vasquez said calmly, though I detected a slight increase in her respiratory rate. Vorth approached until he loomed directly over them. The other humans stepped back instinctively, but Maya remained in place, her eyes level despite the need to tilt her head upward to maintain eye contact with the Gordanian. "Rights?" Vorth laughed, a harsh sound that drew attention from across the plaza. "Rights are earned through strength and contribution. What has humanity contributed besides taking up space and resources? Medical advancements, arts, alternative energy solutions," Maya replied quietly. "Diplomatic initiatives that have prevented 3 interstellar conflicts in the past decade alone." I was surprised by her response. Most humans cowered in the presence of physically superior species. This one seemed different, foolishly brave, or perhaps simply ignorant of her vulnerability. Vorth leaned down, his face mere centimeters from Maya's. Words, always words from humans, never action, never strength. What happened next sent ripples through the entire diplomatic community and fundamentally altered my understanding of humanity. Vorth raised his massive hand and, with casual contempt, slapped Maya across the face. The sound echoed across the suddenly silent plaza. The force of the blow was sufficient to knock a Vaxian unconscious, yet the human female merely staggered slightly, one hand rising to her reddening cheek. I expected tears, pleading, perhaps even the primitive diplomatic outrage humans were known for. Instead, Maya straightened, her eyes never leaving Vorth's face, a small trickle of red blood, such an inefficient oxygen transport system they have, ran from the corner of her mouth. "That was unwise," she said, her voice so soft I had to enhance my audio receptors to capture it. Vorth laughed again, turning to his squad. "Did you hear that? The little human thinks I've made a mistake." The other Gordanians joined in his mirth, their laughter bouncing off the curved walls of the plaza. I detected a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Dr. Patel's posture had changed, almost imperceptibly. His breathing slowed, his weight shifted to the balls of his feet. Captain Vasquez moved her hand closer to her side, where humans often concealed personal weapons. Even Tom, who had initially backed away, now stood straighter, his eyes darting between Maya and Vorth with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. Maya wiped the blood from her lip with the back of her hand, examining it for a moment before meeting Vorth's gaze again. "I suggest you apologize and walk away," she said, still in that same quiet tone. The plaza had grown utterly silent now, various species pausing their activities to witness the confrontation. Public altercations were rare on Nexus Station, especially those involving peacekeepers. I continued recording, certain that I was documenting what would become a cautionary tale about human frailty. Vorth's response was predictable. He stepped closer, using his bulk to tower over Maya. "Or what, little human? What could you possibly do to me?" Maya's reply was unexpected and, to my understanding of human behavior, unprecedented. "I could demonstrate exactly why your assumption of human weakness is the most dangerous mistake in the galaxy," she said, then added something that sent murmurs through the watching crowd. "But I'd rather not cause a diplomatic incident in a public space. If you wish to test your theories about human capabilities, perhaps the training facility on level 7 would be more appropriate." Was this human female actually challenging a Gordanian peacekeeper to combat? Preposterous, suicidal, fascinating. Vorth seemed equally surprised, his ridges flushing with blood. "You dare challenge me, you?" His laughter had a forced quality now, the confidence slightly diminished. Dr. Patel stepped forward then, placing a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. "Perhaps that's enough excitement for today," he said, his voice carrying a strange undercurrent of authority that seemed at odds with his elderly appearance. "Sergeant Vorth, I'm sure you have duties to attend to, as do we." Vorth's attention shifted to the older human. "And who are you to dismiss me, old man?" "Dr. A.J. Patel, formerly of the Earth Defense Force, 7th Special Operations Division," he replied calmly, "and I'm politely suggesting that you apologize to my granddaughter and continue with your day." My recording intensified. The Earth Defense Force was largely considered a ceremonial organization, a concession to human pride rather than a legitimate military power. Yet Dr. Patel had spoken the name as if it should carry weight. Vorth's ridges darkened further. "Your human military designations mean nothing here. Step aside, old man, or you'll receive the same lesson in humility as the female." The confrontation had escalated beyond a simple interaction now. A circle had formed around the humans and Gordanians, species from across the galaxy watching with varying degrees of interest. I detected representatives from at least 12 council races among the observers. This incident would be reported across multiple diplomatic channels by day's end. "Maya," Dr. Patel said quietly, "please take Tom and find Captain Reynolds. I'll handle this." Maya didn't move. "I'm not leaving you, grandfather." The tension was palpable now. Vorth turned to his squad, making a gesture I recognized as a call for restraint. He wanted to handle this personally. Then he reached for the force pike secured at his belt, a standard-issue weapon capable of incapacitating most known species with a single touch. "Interfering with a peacekeeper in the performance of his duties is a serious offense," Vorth said, his voice taking on an official tone. "You humans are hereby detained for questioning regarding suspicious behavior." Captain Vasquez stepped forward now. "On what grounds, Sergeant? We were simply having a meal when you approached us with unprovoked hostility." Vorth ignored her, extending his force pike to its full length. The weapon hummed with energy, its tip glowing with a sickly blue light. "Resistance will be met with appropriate force," he added, clearly hoping for exactly that outcome. What happened next occurred so quickly that I had to review my recording multiple times to fully comprehend the sequence of events. Dr. Patel moved with a speed that belied his age, stepping directly into Vorth's personal space. The Gordanian raised his pike, but before he could bring it to bear, the elderly human's hand shot out, fingers extended in a precise configuration, and pressed against a point where Vorth's neck met his shoulder. Vorth froze, his expression shifting from aggression to confusion, then to unmistakable pain. The force pike clattered to the floor as his arm went limp. "Pressure point manipulation," Dr. Patel explained conversationally, as if lecturing students. "Your species evolved from amphibious predators, giving you excellent strength and reflexes, but your nervous system has several critical vulnerabilities at junction points where your ancestral and evolved anatomies meet." Vorth attempted to speak, but only managed a strangled gurgle. His free arm moved toward his communication device, likely to call for backup. "I wouldn't," Dr. Patel advised. "The pressure I'm currently applying is causing significant discomfort, but no permanent damage. Any sudden movement on your part could change that equation considerably." The watching crowd had grown larger now, whispers racing through the gathered aliens. I captured it all, my understanding of interspecies power dynamics undergoing a significant revision with each passing second. "Now," Dr. Patel continued, "you're going to apologize to my granddaughter for your unprovoked assault. Then you and your squad will continue with your patrol elsewhere. Is that clear?" He must have adjusted his grip slightly because Vorth suddenly found his voice. "Humans using tricks," he gasped. Knowledge of xenobiology isn't a trick, Dr. Patel replied. It's simply information applied effectively. Now, the apology, please. Pride warred with pain on Vorth's face. For a tense moment, I thought he might choose to endure rather than submit to the humiliation of apologizing to a human. Then Dr. Patel's fingers shifted again, and Vorth's knees buckled slightly. I apologize, he managed through clenched teeth. Dr. Patel released his grip and stepped back. There, conflict resolved without unnecessary escalation. A proper peacekeeper should appreciate that approach. Vorth rubbed his neck, his ridges now fully darkened with humiliation and rage. The force pike lay on the ground between them, seemingly forgotten. I knew better. A Gordanian warrior would never abandon his weapon. You've made a serious mistake, human, Vorth growled, his voice recovering its strength. This isn't over. It could be, Maya said, still standing in the same spot. It should be. Walk away. Something in her tone, a certainty, a readiness, should have warned Vorth. It certainly triggered alerts in my analytical processes. This human female was not experiencing the fear response typical of her species in confrontational situations. Her heart rate had actually decreased, her breathing become more measured, curious. Vorth made his move with the expected Gordanian swiftness. His hand dropped to his belt, drawing not the standard issue stunner, but a personal plasma blade, a violation of station regulations for peacekeepers. The weapon hummed to life, its edge glowing with enough energy to slice through most organic materials with minimal resistance. The Council will hear about how you attacked us, Vorth snarled, bringing the blade up in a sweeping arc, aimed at Dr. Patel's chest. After I've eliminated the threat, of course. 3 seconds. That's all it took. In the first second, Maya moved forward rather than away from danger, her right hand striking Vorth's extended wrist with precision that suggested extensive training. The plasma blade wavered off course, missing Dr. Patel by centimeters. In the second, Maya's left hand formed a rigid configuration, fingers straight, thumb tucked, and drove upward under Vorth's jaw, striking a point where the scales were thinnest. The Gordanian's head snapped back, his eyes widening in shock. In the third second, Maya completed her movement with a strike to Vorth's temple that produced a sound I had never heard before and hope never to hear again, the distinctive crack of a Gordanian skull plate fracturing under impact. Vorth stood motionless for a heartbeat, the plasma blade deactivating as it fell from his nerveless fingers. Then he collapsed, dark green blood pooling rapidly beneath his head. The plaza erupted into chaos. The other Gordanian peacekeepers rushed forward, weapons drawn. Captain Vasquez pulled something from her uniform, a communication device, not a weapon, and spoke rapidly into it. Dr. Patel placed himself between Maya and the approaching peacekeepers, his hands raised in a universal gesture of non-aggression. "Medical emergency," he called out, his voice carrying the authority of his profession. "Officer down. I'm a doctor. Let me help him." The Gordanians hesitated, confused by this offer of assistance from the very humans they had been about to detain, or worse. I continued recording, my processors struggling to integrate what I had just witnessed. A human, a young female at that, had just incapacitated a Gordanian warrior with 3 precise strikes. The implications were unsettling. Station security arrived moments later, a mixed team of various species led by Commander Grex, a Thraxian with a reputation for strict adherence to regulations. The crowd was pushed back. A containment field established around the scene. Medical personnel rushed to Vorth's side, though from my vantage point, their urgency seemed more procedural than hopeful. "What happened here?" Grex demanded, his primary eyes scanning the scene while his secondary set remained fixed on the humans. Before anyone could respond, Captain Vasquez stepped forward, presenting an identification chip. Captain Elena Vasquez, Earth Diplomatic Corps. This incident involved an unprovoked attack by Sergeant Vorth against civilians under my protection, followed by an attempt to use deadly force against an elderly man. The response was proportionate self-defense under Section 47 of the Interplanetary Code. Grex's membrane flickered, a sign of skepticism among Thraxians. Proportionate Sergeant Vorth has a fractured skull. After he attacked a young woman without provocation and then drew an unauthorized plasma blade with clear, lethal intent, Vasquez countered smoothly. We have multiple witnesses. Indeed, several beings from the crowd had moved forward, offering their own recording devices as evidence. Surprisingly, most seemed to support the human version of events. I made note of this unexpected solidarity for my report. These humans will be detained pending a full investigation, Grex stated firmly. Surrender any weapons and prepare for transport to security level. I'm afraid that won't be necessary, Commander, a new voice interjected. All eyes turned to see Counselor Tavarian approaching, her Andorian features set in their typical expression of diplomatic neutrality. As the station's highest-ranking official, her presence immediately altered the dynamics of the situation. Counselor, Grex acknowledged, his tone respectful but confused. Standard procedure for violent incidents is superseded when diplomatic immunity is involved. Tavarian finished for him. Captain Vasquez and her party are here as official representatives of Earth government for tomorrow's Cultural Exchange Summit. Article 9 of the station charter provides them with immunity from detention except in cases of premeditated capital crimes. She glanced at the medical team working on Vorth. This was clearly self-defense, as the witness recordings show. I moved closer, still documenting every word. This political maneuvering was unexpected. Humans rarely received such consideration in interspecies incidents. With respect, Counselor, Grex persisted, a peacekeeper has been critically injured. Someone must be held accountable. Tavarian's antenna twitched slightly, the only indication of her impatience. Indeed, I suggest you begin by investigating why Sergeant Vorth was carrying a prohibited plasma blade while on duty, and why he chose to assault a diplomatic visitor without provocation. She turned to Captain Vasquez. I apologize for this unfortunate incident. Captain, please be assured it will be thoroughly investigated. The tension in the air gradually dissipated as the medical team removed Vorth from the scene, and Commander Grex reluctantly ordered his security personnel to stand down. The containment field was deactivated, allowing the crowd to disperse, though many lingered, watching the humans with new interest. Dr. Patel returned to Maya's side, examining the bruise forming on her cheek with professional concern. You'll need to ice that, he said quietly. I'm fine, grandfather, she replied, her composure remarkable given what she had just done. Tom, who had remained unusually silent throughout the confrontation, finally spoke. What just happened? Maya, how did you do that? Captain Vasquez intervened before Maya could respond. I think we should continue this conversation elsewhere, she suggested, her eyes scanning the thinning but still attentive crowd. Our quarters would be more appropriate. The humans gathered their belongings, preparing to leave the plaza. As they did so, I made a decision that would ultimately alter the course of my career and, perhaps, interspecies relations themselves. I approached them directly. Excuse me, I said, using the human language rather than relying on my translator. I am Crix 9, Cultural Attaché of the Vaxian Confederacy. May I speak with you about what transpired here today? Captain Vasquez regarded me with calculated assessment. For what purpose? I have been documenting human interactions for my government, I explained, choosing honesty as the most effective approach. What I witnessed today contradicts much of the established understanding of human capabilities. I believe a more accurate record would benefit all species involved. The humans exchanged glances, engaging in that silent communication that their kind often employs. Finally, Dr. Patel nodded. "Why don't you join us for lunch tomorrow?" he suggested. "We can discuss your observations then." I agreed immediately, my curiosity overriding the standard protocols for maintaining observational distance. As the humans departed, I remained in the plaza, reviewing my recordings and attempting to reconcile what I had witnessed with the prevailing galactic understanding of humanity. The next day found me at the humans' quarters, a modest suite in the diplomatic section of Nexus Station. Captain Vasquez greeted me at the entrance, her manner professional but guarded. "Before we begin," she said, "I need to be clear about something. This conversation is off the record. You may report general impressions to your superiors, but specific details about human capabilities are classified under the Earth Confederation Secrecy Act of 2157. I was surprised by this condition but agreed nonetheless. The opportunity to gain insight into what I had witnessed outweighed the temporary restrictions on my reporting. The interior of their quarters was arranged in typical human fashion, inefficiently spacious, with separate areas for various functions where a single multi-purpose space would have sufficed. Dr. Patel and Maya sat at what appeared to be a dining table, while Tom worked at a console in the corner, occasionally glancing in our direction. "Please join us," Dr. Patel invited, gesturing to an empty chair. I settled my bulk into the human-designed furniture, awkward but functional. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Yesterday's events have raised numerous questions about human physiological capabilities that contradict established xenobiological records." Maya smiled slightly. "You mean you're wondering how a supposedly weak human female managed to crack a Gordanian skull?" Her directness was refreshing. "Precisely. Gordanian cranial plates are among the densest natural armor in known space. Even Chronosan warriors treat them with respect." Dr. Patel poured a steaming liquid into containers, tea. I recognized from my research, "What you witnessed yesterday was not a matter of raw strength," he explained, sliding one of the containers toward me. "Maya didn't overcome Gordanian physiology through superior force." "Then how?" I asked, my recording devices active despite the restrictions. Some information was too valuable not to preserve, even if it remained private. "Precision," Maya answered. "Knowledge of anatomy, application of force to specific vulnerabilities." She demonstrated with her hands, forming the same rigid configuration I had seen her use against Vorth. "The human body is capable of generating significant force when properly aligned, and when that force is applied to exactly the right point. But the training required," I protested, "the reaction speed necessary to counter a Gordanian attack." Captain Vasquez joined us at the table. "That's where things get complicated," she said, "and where we enter territory covered by the Secrecy Act." My curiosity piqued. "You have my word that this information will not appear in my official reports." The humans exchanged glances again before Dr. Patel continued. "Humanity has been aware of its physical disadvantages since first contact with extraterrestrial life. We are not the strongest, the fastest, or the most naturally armored species in the galaxy. This is obvious to anyone with basic observational skills." I nodded, gratified by this acknowledgement of what I had always considered self-evident. "What is less obvious," he continued, "is how we've compensated for these disadvantages. For thousands of years before we reached the stars, humans fought primarily against other humans. This led to the development of combat techniques that don't rely on overwhelming physical superiority, but rather on exploiting anatomical weaknesses. Every species has pressure points, structural vulnerabilities, and biological imperatives that can be leveraged." Maya added, "The trick is knowing where they are and how to access them efficiently." I considered this, but the information necessary to identify such vulnerabilities in diverse alien physiologies would be enormous. Hence the Earth Xenobiological Combat Institute, Captain Vasquez said, then immediately seemed to regret her words, which is not officially acknowledged in interspecies forums. My ocular ridges lifted in surprise. You maintain a secret facility for developing combat techniques against other sentient species? That violates several council treaties. Not developing, Dr. Patel corrected gently. Documenting, cataloging, information gathering is not prohibited under council law, and what one does with that information privately is beyond regulatory scope. I was beginning to understand, and the implications were disturbing. So while presenting an image of physical inferiority, humanity has been preparing for worst-case scenarios, Captain Vasquez confirmed. It's purely defensive. We have no imperial ambitions, no desire for conflict, but we refuse to be vulnerable. Maya's response yesterday, I said slowly, was not exceptional among humans, was it? The young woman shrugged, a gesture I now recognized as casual dismissal. I'm actually only mid-level in certification. Grandfather here was an instructor before he returned to medical practice. Dr. Patel smiled modestly. In my younger days, the techniques evolve constantly as we encounter new species and learn more about existing ones. The pieces aligned in my mind, forming a picture that contradicted decades of accepted wisdom about humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy. You've been hiding your capabilities deliberately. Hiding implies deception, Captain Vasquez countered. We've simply been selective about public demonstrations. There's a difference between weakness and restraint, between inability and choice. Tom spoke up from his console. Besides, who would believe it? Look at the reaction to yesterday's incident. Everyone's assuming it was some kind of fluke or trick. They can't reconcile what they saw with what they know about humans. He had a point. The station's information networks were buzzing with contradictory accounts of the confrontation. Many suggested that Maya had used a concealed device, or that Vorth had been drugged, or that the whole incident had been staged for unknown political purposes. Few accepted the simplest explanation, that a human had physically overpowered a Gordanian through superior technique. Why tell me this? I asked finally. Why risk exposing your strategy? Dr. Patel regarded me thoughtfully. Because misconceptions can be dangerous for all parties involved. What happened yesterday was unfortunate but perhaps necessary. If more species understood that humans are not defenseless, there might be fewer incidents like the one with Sergeant Vorth. Limited transparency with trusted individuals from key species might prevent unnecessary conflicts. Captain Vasquez added, the Vaxian Confederacy has always been among the more reasonable council members. I felt simultaneously flattered and manipulated, an unusual combination of sensations. You're asking me to spread this information in a controlled manner. We're asking you to consider the implications of what you've learned. Maya corrected. What you do with that knowledge is entirely your decision. Our conversation continued for another hour, covering topics from the history of human martial arts to the philosophical underpinnings of their defensive posture in galactic politics. When I finally took my leave, my understanding of humanity had been fundamentally altered. In the days that followed, I revised my reports carefully. Without violating my promise to Captain Vasquez, I began to include subtle indications that human physiological capabilities might be underestimated in current xenobiological literature. I suggested that further research would be beneficial before any confrontational policies were implemented. Sergeant Vorth survived his injuries, though he was transferred to a medical facility on his homeworld for extended recovery. The official investigation concluded that he had acted outside his authority and with excessive force, while Maya's response, though extreme, fell within the parameters of legal self-defense. The incident was formally closed. but its effects continued to ripple through the diplomatic community. I observed other species beginning to treat humans with more caution, more respect. The dismissive attitudes that had been commonplace just weeks before were notably diminished. Humans were watched more carefully now, their movements assessed not with contempt, but with newfound wariness. As for Maya and her companions, they completed their diplomatic mission and departed Nexus Station without further incident. Dr. Patel left me with a data crystal containing what he described as publicly available information on human anatomical studies, material that, while technically accessible to anyone, had been effectively buried under mountains of more prominent research promoting the narrative of human frailty. In my final analysis, I came to a conclusion that I shared only with my most trusted superior. Humanity's greatest strength was not their hidden combat techniques or their knowledge of xenobiology. It was their strategic foresight, their ability to plan generations ahead, cultivating an image that served their security interests while simultaneously advancing their diplomatic agenda. The galaxy believed humans were physically weak, and humans had allowed, even encouraged, this belief. But as I watched the recording of those 3 seconds one last time, the 3 seconds in which Maya Singh shattered both a Gordanian skull and a galactic misconception, I understood a truth that few non-humans had grasped. In evolutionary terms, the most dangerous predator is not the one that displays its strength, but the one that conceals it until the perfect moment to strike. Humanity had evolved not just on their homeworld, but in the theater of interstellar politics, adapting and positioning themselves with patience that most species couldn't comprehend. They were not the fragile, harmless creatures we had believed them to be. They were something far more dangerous, predators disguised as prey, warriors hidden behind diplomats, strength masked as weakness. And now, at least some of us knew to be careful. The human girl had been slapped, the Gordanian skull had been crushed, and the galaxy's understanding of humanity would never be quite the same again.